So I am stepping back into normalcy today as much as you can. I wanted to get on and just talk about some stuff that I've observed. Obviously, the first week was horrible. We were 2 weeks post Garrison. Last week was my kids' spring break. And I didn't put pressure to go back to real life. And so I wanted to get on before I start going back to real life and just talk about some things that I've learned.
Hey friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It is Monday, March 18th, 2024. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. As we are getting about 2 weeks out from the sudden passing of Garrison Brown, the sister wives and family are starting to get back into their real life and in the process of having to move on. And in that, some of the family members are getting back on their social media and are going to have to go back to work, including the sister of Garrison Brown, Madison. Madison, who is the older sister of Garrison and one of only two daughters of Janelle and Cody Brown, shared her thoughts about returning to social media and really just the process of what she's been experiencing the last several weeks, and gave new insight into some of the struggles that her brother was facing in the months before his untimely passing. And I think this video by Madison is by far the most raw and vulnerable we have probably seen anyone so far from the family, expressing their grief, but also sharing the pain that they're feeling related to the type of loss they're experiencing, which is a different type of loss because they weren't prepared. They didn't know that this was going to happen, and he was so young. She also spoke openly about mental health and taking care of your mental health and the awareness that needs to be discussed about mental health and the importance of getting help if you need help. So it's really the first time we're hearing someone from the family kind of advocate about that in a meaningful way, in a really heartfelt way. And Madison, being the older sister, was always very protective of her siblings and always, I would say, stern, but super loving and loyal to her siblings. And she was also very close to her siblings. And so to hear her be so vulnerable is truly amazing given what they're facing right now and the level of scrutiny that the family is under.
I love Instagram. I know social media can be, so I wanted to kind of get back to normalcy here, but I wanted to address some things first. First thing is I just wanted to say thank you for the outpouring of love that we've had. I have received probably thousands of messages from you guys just saying condolences, talking about your experiences and just love. And I wanted to say thank you for that because I maybe didn't respond, but I read them and a lot of you had experienced something like this. So it's crazy how many people it touches.
Madison's the first one in the family to actually use the word of how he passed away, which I actually had to bleep out and mute because of algorithms and how everything works on YouTube. But it is one of the leading causes of death in the United States, according to the Centers for Disease Control. And it predominantly affects men more than women. And when they look at the actual percentages, for instance, I'm actually looking at the CDC right now. And for instance, in 2022, there was 49,449 attributing to this cause. And of that, 39,255 were men. And so with men at the highest risk for these types of passings, there has been an uptick in trying to understand why this is occurring, why there's been an increase in the last several years. And then there's populations that are more prone, including the veteran and active duty populations of the military. And because of how common it is and prevalent, it impacts people across the United States, across the world. And unless you're touched by it, you don't even realize sort of all of the different people that have gone through something similar. And I've seen it in my own comments from all of you that have also been touched in this way and have had a loss this way. So I'm sure sharing those messages with the family is helping them feel less alone. And when you're going through something like this, not feeling alone is such a critical component of managing and getting through your grief, is to know that other people have gone through what you have and have been able to get through it. To see someone else persevere and manage that deep of a loss, it helps people. So for those of you sending those kinds of messages to the family, that's so touching. And I think, like Maddie said, thank you.
The other thing I wanted to say, I had to write them down, was 4 things I learned over these couple of weeks. First thing is, mental health is so important, and I don't think we talk about it enough, and I don't think we do enough to bring awareness. It wasn't bullying, it wasn't a lack of love that Garrison had, it was mental health. And I am going to continue talking about mental health and self-care until I am blue in the face, because I don't think it's talked about enough in a way that people understand it.
Dealing with someone that is struggling with a mental illness or has a mental health issue or disorder is challenging. And if you are in a society like the world of the Apostolic United Brethren that they all grew up in, mental illness is not taken seriously and it is not treated well, because there's such a fear of the outsiders and of mandated reporters reporting a family to authorities for being polygamous or reporting suspected abuse in a home for children. A lot of polygamous families don't go to the doctor and they don't bring their children to the doctor. And women don't see doctors for their birth of their children and instead give birth at home and have children at home and then have a midwife in lieu of a doctor. And not to say there's anything wrong with a midwife, but they're not getting the postnatal care a lot of times for their postpartum depression. Now, a lot of you do remember that when Christine had Truly, she actually was open about, she went to the doctor and got medication to manage her postpartum depression, which was phenomenal, because that's not something that you would normally see in this kind of situation with this group of people in the Apostolic United Brethren. But when you're indoctrinated so wild, like so inherently to not trust people and to not trust doctors and to not trust psychologists, and that psychologists are going, they're wrong and they're bad, and really they don't want you to see psychologists because they'll help you realize that half of the reason why you're feeling the way you're feeling is because polygamy is abusive. That's neither here nor there, but because the group is like indoctrinating them and brainwashing them to believe not to trust doctors and psychologists, there's so many people in these groups that are struggling. And so to come out of that and to understand that it's okay to get help takes a lot of work. And I'm so happy to hear her addressing this and bringing this awareness out, because she's going to be able to touch people that are in that world and have a conversation in that world of people that follow her from that world. And that's a conversation that needs to be had, because it impacts this world so much. And it impacts the boys and the young men that leave a lot more than the women in this group, especially the men that leave the culture and are displaced from the culture or shunned by their fathers or the church. And I'm so proud of her for taking that step and using her voice to advocate in that way. And I truly am so glad that if anything can be taken from this, that this conversation can take place to help save other people's lives.
The other thing I was going to say is time is so precious. And if you're not happy with how you're spending your time and you don't feel fulfilled in life, then I would encourage you to reevaluate, because it's so fleeting and it's so precious. And I've noticed that, especially these last 2 weeks, but having kids too. The other thing is social media is not real. And I'm going to be pushing really hard to be more, I have been, but even more so. I'm done with filters. and be more authentic. It's a highlight reel, and that was something that Garrison and I talked a lot about. And I know my other siblings and my mom have expressed this, that Garrison used to feel like he wasn't doing enough because he was comparing himself to things on social media. And I don't think that it's real. And I think we need to remember that. So if you're ever feeling down on yourself because you see somebody post something, remember it's their highlight reel and you don't see all the stuff going on in the background.
I like her reminder about social media, but I also think that that gives sort of an insight into some of the struggles that Garrison was having, in that his self-esteem clearly was feeling like he wasn't as good as other people. It sounds like he was feeling like he wasn't accomplishing as much as other people, and as though he should have been doing more with his life and with his time, and he should have had more by this point in his life. And that makes me think about, on the show, how he said that he bought the house that his dad never thought that he would buy, and he bought a car that his dad never thought he could buy. And it also makes me think about, on the show, when he was a teenager, he was talking about in an episode about how it was always really hard for him to find something that was his own, that he could find identity in, because his older brothers were so smart and so accomplished. His brother that's right above him, Hunter, won state for wrestling for 2 years in a row. He went to the Air Force Academy, got his master's degree in nursing from Johns Hopkins. He has Logan, who, he went to UNLV. He went ahead and got his MBA. And I think he had 2 older brothers that were such high achievers that he did at times struggle to feel like he was good enough. And I remember that episode, he was talking about how once he got involved in the ROTC, he found something that he was good at, that he made him feel good, that gave him a sense of purpose and a sense of value, and something that he could excel at. And that wasn't what his brothers were doing. A big part of what he went through in his teen years was finding his own identity outside of what his brothers had accomplished. And his dad was so into sports and into wrestling that he didn't go that direction. And it's hard when you have an overachieving sibling to sometimes feel like you are the one that was left behind. And I can say that from experience. When you're the sibling where your older sibling is the one that can seemingly do everything and you don't feel like you can measure up. And if that's a struggle he was having, that's such a good reminder for her to tell people it is a highlight reel and you're not seeing all of their struggles and all of their challenges that on social media. But then when you combine that with polygamy and everyone's comparing and everyone's competing and everyone's trying to get attention from the father and attention from one another, I could see how that would make and compound him feeling inadequate when he was really doing so much. He was dealing with mental illness and self-esteem issues, and obviously he's got a father that rejects him, which is going to compound and make your self-esteem issues worse, and it's going to make your mental health worse. It's a recipe for just disaster. And I'm just glad that she's having these conversations and reminding people that you are enough and you're doing enough. And if you're not happy, you can make changes. And that's true.
Or is the value of community and loving each other even with your differences. I've had a phenomenal community show up, and also my siblings. We all disagree. We're all very strongly opinionated people, and we have disagreements on other things. But the way that we can show up for each other and love each other, even in this time, even with our differences, and the way that I've had friends and other family show up. So if you're struggling with community, I would encourage you to get out and talk to people and get away from your screens and social media is not real, and get community with your family, your friends, your loved ones. And I just wanted to also, again, just say a huge thank you to all of you who have just shown love and just kindness over the last few weeks. So
I think what she's meaning to say is, if you're self-isolating, which can commonly happen when you're dealing with depression or some struggles with your mental health, to get out and engage in the community and engage with your friends and your family, and don't put yourself into a deeper place of depression and sadness and frustration. And that community and surrounding yourself with the people that love you can help you feel better about yourself. And it also sounds like that same community feeling has been what's helping her move forward in her healing, and that her siblings can put their differences aside right now and work towards being there for one another, even though they disagree about other things, even though they're having fundamental opinions about the family or political or whatever that are very different. In this moment, they can be there for each other. And I think that's good. I think a sign of someone struggling with mental health would be someone that is self-isolating. And so if you do see someone self-isolating, don't be shy to reach out to them and see if they're doing okay, and check in with them and make sure that they're okay, and make sure that, you know, if there's anything that you can do for them. And also, if you see someone self-isolating, let them know that it's okay to get help if they need to, and that there's people that they can talk to, or offer to bring them coffee, or ask them to go out for, you know, a day, or, you know, do something together. It's definitely good to get out and to be with your community, but you can also be in a community and be very alone within depression and mental illness. So you could be still surrounded by a lot of people and still feel very, very alone and not feel connected and engaged. And that's where, yes, community will help you. And I agree with her 100%. I also agree and would say that on top of getting with other people is to make sure to talk to your doctor about that you're feeling like less inclined to want to spend time with people, less motivated to be actively involved in the passions and activities that you enjoy, and you're withdrawing from people. And it sounds like he was withdrawing from people due to his mental illness. And it's just it's sad overall, but I'm glad to hear her talk about it. I'm glad to hear her share this so openly. The feedback she got in her comments was overwhelmingly supportive and grateful that she was sharing how she was doing. And I think it's a good reminder for other people that you can get help, that there are ways to get through what you're going through, and that reminding yourself that good self-talk. And that can be very challenging when you have a chemical imbalance like depression, anxiety, ADHD, or, you know, any sort of mental illness, bipolar, schizophrenia. I don't know what he was managing, but chemical imbalances can make self-talk very difficult to be positive, which is again why speaking to your doctor is also super important. I'm glad to see her coming back. I'm glad to see her addressing what she's been facing and be so vulnerable. And I'm glad to hear her that she wants to continue to have these conversations. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are about her, what she shared, what your thoughts are. If you've struggled with depression or mental illness and how you've managed to get through it, I'd love to hear your strategies and coping mechanisms. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure to subscribe, and thank you so much for watching this video. Bye guys.